A very warm welcome, everyone, to the new Business and Markets year 2024. I am Bosu Nomofai. It's Monday the 1st, and many global markets are closed until Tuesday. So let's get started. Here in Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu today delivered a new message of hope to the citizens, reaffirming that his reforms of the past 6 months are well intended. Now, the president also signed the new year budget of 28.7 trillion naira into operation. That's barely 24 hours after it was passed by the National Assembly. In the meantime, Nigeria's third quarter foreign capital inflows report reveals that the country is hitting the bottom of the barrel, as only about 5 state governments were able to attract any form of inflows in the 3 months ended September 2023. Now let's chat to this as well as the country's revenue drive, budgeting and more in the new year that starts right now. Meet my guest, Chukwu, the Group CEO at Cowry Asset Management. A good evening to you, sir. We appreciate you coming through on the program. All right, thank you. Chukwu is getting back into the room via WebEx to join us for this conversation. Is also joining us for this conversation is Paul Alaje. He's a public policy analyst and a senior economist at SPM. Professionals, both of them are discussing Nigeria's investment drive. The country secured just about $620 million in the third quarter ended September, and that was one of the lowest that the country had received. If you put that on the back of what Nigeria received, about $1.1 billion in the second quarter of last year, that's a whole lot much lower. The good news, however, is that the manufacturing sector at least accounted for about $230 million of the headline turnover in the period ended September 2023. However, if you get the FPI, which is the foreign portfolio investment, the chunk of that still goes to stocks, bonds, and money market instruments on broad straight. We're looking at these inflows into the Nigeria's economy within the period under review and why the country's done not so fantastically well over the past 4 years. Paul Alaje is live to us now from Abuja Studio. So good evening to you, Paul. We appreciate your coming through.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. Let me say compliment of the season. Thank
you so much. Now let's get started with this. Let's hit the ground running. Is it some good news, as far as you are concerned, that industrial manufacturing accounts for about 42% of total FDIs in the third quarter of last year?
Well, I think it's an improvement to what we've had traditionally. Before now, portfolio investment have taken so much percentage of the total FDI that have been attracted to Nigeria. So having an improvement to about 42%, that is near half, I think it's some good news, but I strongly believe that we can do better. Countries around the world, especially those that are thirsty for development, growth, and manufacturing, so that they can employ more people, what they attract more, it has been manufacturing and processing as well as production into their country, so that we have 42% is something we should commend. But we should also ask of how much is this 42%? Is it 42% of $100 billion or 42% of $100 million? Whatever it is, it's an improved percentage of the amount that is said in a particular year. Yes, and I think it's something that we should commend.
Yes, sir. If you look at industrial manufacturing, considering the country's issues around export, infrastructure, energy, power, whatever it is, I'm sure you consider, and looking at last year, 2023, with the whole issues around elections and the whole Naira redesign and water view inflation, removal of food subsidy, that figure looks like some chunk of money on the table. But again, like you said, it's an improvement. Let me bring in Chukwu, financial professional, market professional, and the CEO at Cowry Asset Management. Good evening to you. Thanks for making it through. We all made it through 2023 to the new year. Thank you so much for coming through tonight.
Thank you for having me, and happy New Year.
Thank you so much. Johnson is the one smiling the most among the three of us, and that's because there's so much money on the stock market last year. The market did roughly 46%. That's trillions of naira on the table. So, Paul, don't get jealous. Don't envy him. That's the guy with the money. So, I'm going to ask, because again, inflows into stocks, bonds, and money market instruments account for the chunk of our FPIs in the third quarter. Was this some cheering news for you, Johnson?
Well, Bossy, let me start by adding a few things to what Paul said as it relates to the $279 million that came into the productive and manufacturing sector. If you look at that figure, of that amount, most of it was related to loan. If you disaggregate the $654.65 million that came in at foreign capital importation into the country, you realize that $507.77 million was other investment. And that other investment, $507.76, just short of 0.01, related to loans. So what actually went to the manufacturing sector was loan, which is a one-off flow, and that has a compelling obligation, that what you call non-discretionary obligation, that it has to be paid back and interest has to be paid on it. So it wasn't like we are talking of foreign direct investment. As to say, if the entire foreign direct investment that came in was only $59.77 million, and of that amount, 59.7 was related to equity investment. So maybe if you even say of the 279 million, of that amount, maybe say 59 million was equity investment. The rest was purely loan. And a loan is an obligation that has to be paid back, and also has an interest component of it that's obligatory. So let's not celebrate that we had inflow into the manufacturing sector, because a large part of that inflow was loan. What we'll be looking for, what should be the focus of the country, should be attracting foreign direct investment, which was one of the lowest we saw in the third quarter of this year. Only $59.77 million came in as foreign direct investment. So we must put this in the context of it. Then when you talk of portfolio investment, for the first time, we saw a portfolio investment of $87.11 million for the entire quarter. And that is a material decline from what we used to have, because investors are shy of taking on investment in a lot of our portfolios, Nigerian securities. Most of the investment we saw went into equity investment, which you have already pointed at. We saw an equity appreciation, capital market appreciation about 46% in the in the outgone year. So that was attracted those who put money in equities. But look at what normally go to the bond market. Only 20 million went into bond market and bond instruments. And in terms of money market, you also realize that a large chunk of the money only went into equities. So in reality, we're seeing a situation where foreign investors are shying away from investing in the country. You have to look at, if you look at the total amount that came in, 654 million. Preceding quarter, so second quarter of this year, we had 1,030 million. First quarter, we had 1,130 million. And if you even move back, last year, we had about 5.3 billion. At the current rate, we have only had 2.8 billion. So if you look at that, we're not going to have anything materially more than 3.5 billion in the current year. The preceding year, we had 6.5 billion. And the year preceding to that, prior to that, we had about 9 billion. So we have seen consistent decline in capital inflow into the country.
Interesting analysis and breaking down you've done. Thank you so much. Paul is putting his hands in the industrial manufacturing a little bit, so he understands where the shoe is pinching. But again, I'm looking at his report. About 5 state governments actually secured inflows in the third quarter. Lagos, Ogun State, you got FCT, which is the Federal Capital Territory, and of course you have 2 other state governments. That's Abia and Akwa Ibom. So what does that really say about Nigeria as an investment destination? 5 state governments out of 35 plus FCT. Talk to me, Paul.
Well, to a large extent, most of our states are not really marketable for investment. The publication by the Bureau of Statistics, as well as what was published by Budget, revealed that most of the states are not viable for investment. Even without this investment, they are completely not viable. The focus of state government has been, how do we make more money? So long as the federal government have removed subsidy, which makes more money to be available on the table of states.
Viable, Paul. Every state in Nigeria is viable. There are opportunities.
I'm going somewhere. I'm going somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah, opportunities does not mean viability. It is when you convert your opportunities to advantage that it becomes viability. If you write a business plan, everybody can do any business. But when you do the business, will you break even? As it is today, what are the things that are put in place for businesses to come to those places? If you go to Europe, many people don't know many parts of Nigeria. It is when these investors come to Nigeria, or our partners in Nigeria, that have done some survey to them. But by how have we really pushed some of these natural resources, some of these investable investment we have in Nigeria, have we made them available to the rest of the world? The truth is that Nigeria is a viable place to put business, but with the style and the management that we have today, I doubt. I give you an example. Zanzibar is part of Tanzania. The investment and foreign direct investment, as well as people going for tourism in Zanzibar, you would think that island is a country of its own. It used to be, but you would think it's actually a country of its own because of how the image, the presentation, the arrangement of that environment. The truth is that Zanzibar don't have as much road as we have in Abuja. They don't even have as much electricity. They don't. So why are Europeans, why are investors going to build around that environment? Why can't we do the same with Calabar? Why can't we do that? Why are we having challenges making the environment? Investors have their responsibility to perform.
Mr. President,
also, and I'm talking to subnational.
Yes, Mr. President, the current president has been on the road since the first day he took office. He's been to India, he's been to the United States, he's been virtually everywhere. Now, both of you, Paul and Johnson, both of you talk to investors. I know, Paul, you've been to one or two countries in Europe as well as in Middle East, searching for foreign investors on the real sector side. Johnson, Chukwu, I'm sure you hear from investors who want to come into Nigeria on both the portfolio side and direct investment side on a daily basis. What are the major impediments to Nigeria to realize the full inflows of those many FDI promises? We've got a long list of promises. And there's no free lunch on promises. I want the real meal on the table. What are the main impediments? Let me start with you, Johnson. Give me one or two items on your list.
Okay, Boston, one of the greatest impediments we have in the country is the quality of leadership. And when you talk about quality of leadership, you're talking about the policy environment. Because leaders define the policies. Leaders define the sector that should be attractive to investors. Leaders create the incentive schemes, and the leaders also provide the security that investors require to come into any country. And to prove this, to further highlight this, if you look at the distribution of foreign capital inflow into the economy in the third quarter of the year, for the first time in the history of Abia State featured as the third largest recipient of capital inflow into the country. It had never happened since the state was created in 1991. Why was it so? Because Abia State now has a governor who is making the right vibes, who investors can look at and say, look, he knows what he's doing, he's going somewhere, and we can actually bet on him. And that is what is lacking in a lot of the state governments or the subnationals. Lagos State, Abuja, the FCT, and the few states have continued to be the dominant recipient of capital inflow into the country. For the first time, we are seeing a new kid on the block. So that means investors are actually looking for a leader that will define the opportunity areas and create the right incentives.
Okay, great. Now, hold on, Johnson. We'll listen to the quality of your connection there. Let me ask Paul. Paul, give me an idea. What items do you have on your list, having had these various discussions about foreign direct investment? We go out and we get so much promises, 50 billion, 100 billion, whatever it is in dollars. At the end of the day, we fold our hands and virtually nothing comes in.
Well, there are a number of them. I completely agree with Mr. Johnson on one of the points. But another one is perceived corruption. A number of people around the world believe that Nigeria is corrupt. And when you have people who want to do business based on the rules and guidelines of what is obtainable in another market, coming to Nigeria to do such business may be a lot of worries. Therefore, the president of the federation that have been putting all efforts in place to go around to woo this investment must also remove some bottlenecks. Another one is that there is this unnecessary bureaucracy. How long will it take to speak with direct person that is involved when it comes to the real decision makers? The lower people go, because I don't see somebody in Europe who wants to invest in Nigeria. How will we just have direct access to the minister? So there are some persons that have put themselves in groups that people will see along the way, in trying to see maybe the minister or the executive. It's really very, very challenging without meeting these people. Can we make a platform available for anybody that wants to invest in Nigeria to have direct access to government so that the perception people have about us can start to change? That is one. Two, attitude of the people they meet, especially within the civil service. While we have some fantastic, brilliant civil servants, we also have some that are very lethargic. I work with civil service, especially in different parts of the country, and I can tell you, we have both of the divide. Very excellent people. We also have some that are a bit laid back. Now, for those that are a bit laid back, there may be people that are more visible, from the front desk. Who are the people you are talking to? Are they people that are buried in watching African magic during official hour? Or what kind of attitude? Even when you talk to them, again, when you talk to somebody who is an assistant to the key decision maker, they may say that the decision maker is not around, therefore you have to wait. And in economics, even in life, time is money. If the decision cannot be made because somebody is not around, investment is calculated in weeks. If I have to wait for 1 week, spending hotel money and spending my money just because I want to wait to spend my money or to invest my money in a country, I will know that such country is not just ready. We need those.
So when you say, when Mr. President say that Nigeria is open for business, what does that mean? Open for business. So, yes, everyone's open for business. So I look at that like an itinerant Igbo shop owner in Lagos, for example, anywhere in Nigeria. He's open for business. What does it really mean when you say that you are open for business? I can see the shop. I can see the shop is there.
The Igbo man,
yes. When you say it's open for business, what does that mean?
But when you see the Igbo man open for business in Lagos, he goes beyond opening the shop. He keeps running after you, one passenger after the other, one potential customer after the other, bringing them to his shop, trying to sell that shoe to them. Our job is to also find those investors, especially those that have come to the country by themselves, to drag them into investing on our soil, into putting their monies in our country. That is what we need. It is not enough to say we are open for business. When people come in the real sense, as our civil service ready to accept them?
Okay.
Is our functionaries ready to accept them?
Yes.
Is our attitude ready to accept them?
Okay,
our
attitude.
Is it ready to accept them?
So attitude.
These are things that we have to deal with.
You are open for business, but attitude could be an issue. Let me ask Johnson Chukwu is back in this conversation. He's been talking about, I was just brought out the example of an itinerant Igbo, a person about how his attitude to business and when he says open for business. Well, what does it really mean? Mr. President, everybody goes around saying Nigeria is open for business. Every minister is a sing-song in Nigeria. So what does it really mean to say you're open for business?
Well, the key thing about being open for business, you must have a value proposition you are making to the world or to investors. Nigeria has made value proposition to investors in the past. Currently, we don't seem to be making value proposition to investors. Two, you also tell an investor that if you come to my country, your investment is secured, your principal amount is secured, your life is secured, you can move around anywhere you want to go to, and if there is a dispute, you can actually get judgment in the legal through the legal system. Nigeria is not saying that to the world today, where our legal system has gone belly up. So investors who want to come to the country, we are looking at, can the legal system be a platform for me to seek redress in case I have a dispute? The investors are saying, can I safely go to your country and move around and be safe and be assured of my safety? Investors are looking at, do I have access to foreign, to dollar or foreign currency to be able to take out my dividend and other investment returns? Investors are looking at which sectors are viable in the economy and what are the incentives that are being created to those sectors. So if you don't do those things, so the tenant Igbo trader is saying, look, buy this because you're going to get this value for it. And I can also assure you that if you need additional products, I'll go to my brother and get those products from you. Or I will actually pretend I have another shop in another corner of the place and I can get the product for you. And if you are looking for me anytime, this is where to get me. And if there's a dispute, this is how you will resolve the dispute. Those propositions that the investors are looking for before they come to any country. Unfortunately, our country is not offering many of that. It's not enough for the president to go to other parts of the world and seek for investors.
Okay, great.
We must need investors. These are the opportunity areas. When we did the telecommunications licensing, we created an investment opportunity for investors to come into the country.
All right, so that
when
needs
we
to change.
came up with the cement policy, created an investment platform for investors to put in money, including local investors. We need to go back and define where the opportunities are and what are the incentives around those opportunity areas.
Oh, I get it. So that needs to change in the new year. So we're going to look ahead 2024. Now, if you look at Nigeria's economic management drive, it seems to be more tailored. How can we tailor it more towards local and foreign investments and not just the traditional revenue generation mindset? It looks like everybody's just focused on revenue generation. What needs to change there? Paul?
Needs to change. Those that have been appointed as ministers as well as state governors, including the president, must see that what really will bring sustainable income, sustainable revenue to government in the medium term and in the long term will be to have more investment into Nigeria, which seems to have removed subsidy and devalued the naira. That gives government more revenue. But as that translated to more jobs, if we want to solve most of our problems together, we need real investment. And this investment will first impact what is happening in the foreign reserve because it will grow. It will also impact on the job market because more jobs will be given to people. And if we manage it well, it may also make a turn around inflation, which of course is bedeviling our nation right now. So what does that mean? The Minister of Education, for instance, must see beyond administrative roles of education. Can we bring investment into that sector? The Minister of Health must see beyond administrative health minister into, can we drag investment into health? The same with agriculture. All ministry as agency of government must not just look at how do we perform administrative function or revenue collection center. And I want to advise the authorities of today, especially at the center, must rethink investment in this country. Mr. President has shown it with his body language that is looking for investment. But in all of this investment we are looking for, can we look at what are the hurdles to investment? Because when investment come, all of them will not come to Abuja. Some will go to Sokoto, some will go to Bayelsa, some will go to Oyo, some will go to Calabar, some will go to Borno. Are those areas where this investment will go, are they ready? That is where I'm concerned about viability of those states as they are today. So state government must understand that they now need to perform the role of chief economist of their state for penury, for poverty, for hunger in their state to go down, such that the very small amount over 30 states are generating in IGR will truly disappear because they will now make more money for personal income tax and all other taxes that is available to them at the state level, so as well as the federal government as well.
Investment is what generates jobs. That's what creates jobs. That's what will create further revenue. So we've got an annual budget, Johnson. How do you think we can rejig our budgets just to be an investment inflows enabler rather than simply a collection, a document that shows how we're going to collect revenue and then share it at the end of the day and then the cycle continues?
The budget is currently focused on recurrent expenditure as well as debt service. If you look at the portion of the budget that is going to critical infrastructure development, which supports manufacturing or investment, that portion is very inconsequential. If you consider the first 9 months of last year, of the 12 trillion that was spent, only 1.4 trillion was spent on capital projects. And even the current budget, because capital projects seems to be discretionary in the sense that it's only when they have surplus resources that they can invest in that. Without changing our orientation on budgetary implementation, we are not going to have the right infrastructure that will support productive activity, that will incentivize investors to invest here, because if you invest here, you're not going to produce at a competitive cost. And that's one of the key things we have to look at. Currently, our budget is not zero-based budget as the previous government had mounted, where every component of the budget has to be freshly justified afresh and not just incremental to say last year we spent 10 billion, this year inflation was 28.2%, we have to spend more, maybe 12 billion. We need to justify every budget, and we need to make sure we get value for money. And that we also have to recognize that current fiscal framework of the federal government does not support federal government building critical infrastructure from budgetary allocation. So we must rejig that and bring in private capital to build some of the critical commercially viable infrastructure, such that we will catalyze economic activities and actually encourage investment. Without that, if we continue the way we are going, I mean, the federal government came up and said this, the Senate should securitize about 7.2 trillion naira ways and means funding. And if you look at that fact, at the end of September, only 4.4 trillion was funded by central bank. So if we are securitizing 7.2 trillion at the end of December, it then means another 3.2 trillion was funded of government expenditure by the central bank. You can't continue that way. We are now talking of a debt profile of over 87 trillion. The government must recognize that this trajectory is leading us to only a calamity. And we must pull back and look at the structure of the budget and focus on whatever government has. Government revenue should cover overhead. Anything above that, government must cut down that overhead. We cannot borrow to fund overhead. Until we get to that point, then we have not started the budgeting project that we require for economic growth.
So if we look at Nigeria from a broader foreign investment window, Paul Alaje, as a policy, as an agenda, we have the Sovereign Investment Authority, the NSIA. Of course, we all know that China is holding billions and trillions of dollars in U.S. Treasury assets. Is it a time that perhaps the Nigerian Central Bank or the NSI should invest more aggressively in international private sector companies, perhaps invest in other countries' financial instruments, such as the U.S. 10-year Treasury, for example, so that when things go as tough as it were last year, and this is going to be most likely this year, we can have something to lean back on? Paul?
I completely agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%. The agency must look beyond just investing in Nigeria. It must look at investing in other markets, which includes the US, China, and a few other markets that is very viable. If you look at the investment the United States is doing around the world, especially China, what it's doing in Africa, it's important for the investment agency in Nigeria to look beyond just putting money in Nigeria. And I want to say beyond the agency, even private businesses in Nigeria must be encouraged to invest outside Nigeria. The Chinese government is doing everything possible to put Chinese business to come invest in Nigeria, such that when we are paying back either the Chinese business or Chinese bank, we are paying back at dollar rate based on our agreement as of that time. This is a way exchange rate is hedged by those countries. Nigeria seems to be falling flat because we have not had any platform, any investment, significant amount for central bank to smile, in spite of all the demands that is putting pressure on central bank. But which of them is giving us return on this kind of demand? So as much as we want to invest locally, we must also organize ourselves in putting investment outside Nigeria, especially those investments we know will certainly yield returns to our country. I think it's high time we started having conversation, and beyond the conversation, we started taking decision for this investment to happen. When average Nigeria travel, what are they going to look for? Job. When a Chinese person or Indian travel out, what are they going to look for? Maybe to work for a short time. After a while, they want to own a business in that country, such that the remittances at home will surely be more. So I'm encouraging, when we know that our young people must travel, quote and unquote, Japa, how have we prepared them? You can look at what's it called now? Sorry, the name of the country escaped my mind. It's training their people now to be clerical staff in other countries. And as they travel, they become the best front desk person, the best receptionist, and all of those. All the money is going back based on the agreement.
Paul, that is really good. You talk about remittances and what have you. But I'm sure, so NNPC's got 20% equity in Dangote refinery. So you're saying perhaps we can take 0.5% or whatever percentage, of NNPC in Saudi Aramco, for example. Saudi Aramco is doing about $300 billion. If we have a percentage of that, I'm sure Johnson Chukwu will be smiling more than he is right now, isn't it? I want to just listen 30 seconds.
It will be. It will be.
30 seconds or less.
Okay. Basic thing is that the country does not even have the resources to invest. If you look at the total amount that is available in SS Crude, just about $456,000 that is left in SS Crude account. As it stands today, the government is not leaving anything. Every exchange rate differential is shared among the three states of the three levels of government. So we're not setting anything aside. Unlike other countries that are growing their sovereign investment fund, we are not growing ours. If we were possible for them to rate the amount that we have with the sovereign wealth fund, they would have rated it. If you look at the sovereign wealth fund, we have what they call the next generation fund, you have the stabilization fund, and you have the infrastructure fund. Money should be invested from if money is allocated to the next generation fund, we would have had investment that going into instrument that will generate returns in the future. But we don't even, nothing has gone to the sovereign investment fund for quite some time now. And if we're not doing that, clearly, there's no way we will have the resources to invest anywhere in the world.
All right, we thank both of you for your insights into some of those fundamental issues around the state of the Nigerian economy as we kick off the new year, 2024. Thank you very much. Do have a great evening. Johnson Chukwu, the Group CEO at Carrier Asset Management, and Paul Alaje, Senior Economist at SPM Professionals. Thank you so much. The conversation continues in the new year. We've got 364 days more.